October is Pregnancy, Infant, and Child Loss Awareness Month, and October 15th is Pregnancy and Infant Loss Remembrance Day. As we embark on this month, we wanted to sit down with someone who has experienced miscarriage herself and discuss the ways in which we can be there for moms and families who have mourned the loss of children. The Mayo Clinic reports that 10 to 20% of all pregnancies end in miscarriage, but that number could be higher due to the fact that some women miscarry very early before they realize they are pregnant. Crystalina Evert, founder of Women Made New Ministries, joins me now. Crystalina, thank you for being here. I know that you have suffered through 3 miscarriages throughout your life, one pretty recently. I'm so sorry for your loss, and I just wanted to ask, when this happened to you, what or who was it that really gave you the most consolation?
The most recent one actually happened last summer, and my husband was on a pilgrimage, and this was the first one that I actually went through by myself.
Wow.
And I will say every miscarriage has been very different, just with the timing of the miscarriage and how I was able to handle it emotionally. And this last one was very different one because I went through it alone. And 2, I was so early on in that pregnancy that it was hard for people to kind of comprehend. And that's something I never experienced before, because there wasn't that bump of the belly and that big exciting announcement and people seeing and you showing that still was a pregnancy. And sometimes it gets written off and not taken as like a death of a child. But at the end of the day, that was my baby. I had a bond with that child. There was an emotional bond, a spiritual bond, and that God gives life, but God also takes life. And we're all open to life in the Catholic faith. And when he takes it from us, when you want to be so open, no matter the cost, that's really hard. And I know it was a gift to our family, and I didn't really understand at the time, because you go through this powerlessness, you go through this anger, you go through this grief, you go through all of the emotions when you lose someone that you love. And a lot of the times these women that have these miscarriages, and I experienced it a little bit myself this last time, that you are going through it alone.
And that must be such a difficult thing to go through it alone. It just compounds the difficulty, I'm sure. Crystalina, when a woman loses her baby, what are some of the things that people around her should be mindful of in serving her that they might not immediately be cognizant of, things that you might not think of that could perhaps hurt her more?
One, that give yourself time to grieve. A lot of women think, well, it's a miscarriage, and the world looks at life like it's disposable, right? And even some family members, well, it was a miscarriage, that really wasn't a baby, but it was. And so to give yourself time to grieve, and give people that may have had a miscarriage that time to grieve. And you may not fully understand it, but they are going through something emotionally, physically, and just to be there with them and let them have that grieving period. But also, I would encourage the women that have experienced miscarriages to embrace your baby, to name your baby, to pray to your baby. And we don't always understand why we have that loss in our lives, but at the same time, God knows. And with this recent last miscarriage that I did have, I had this realization in prayer that was for me, but that God knew the battles that our family would be facing, the battles I would be facing, and that you have that little one that is so close to God, that has passed on, that is there on the other side, that really is praying for you, interceding for you, and really kind of that cheerleader that you need, those extra special graces of that family member up there that you wouldn't have had if they came on this earth with you. And so those were just special graces for myself. And to know that that baby is part of your family and forever will be part of your family. So when people ask, how many kids do you have? I always say, well, I have 11. I have 8 here and 3 in heaven.
Wow.
And it's amazing how some women just all of a sudden tear up. And they said, I'm the same. And they kind of are shy. Like, I've had 5 miscarriages, or I have had a miscarriage, where it's like they're almost like quiet about it. But it's like, no, embrace your child, embrace your loved one. And that is okay. And they are with you, and they are your family, and you will see them when you pass away and you die one day.
Yes, it's like your little personal saint in heaven, and it's such a source of hope.
It really is. It's your own, like, going to battle for you up there,
Yes.
and some of us really need that. And God knows that. And he fully understands the graces that you're getting. And Like us, we named all of them. I did not name the last one though, and I'm still healing from that. I'm still kind of working through that because
Of
it's not just
course.
an overnight one and done thing.
Right.
It's something you really have to process over time. And my son even came up to me a couple months ago, and he's like, "Mom, wouldn't this be the month that we would have you would have been having a baby?" And it kind of jolted me, because they know what happens. We're very open about it. We pray to their brothers and sisters, and the fact that's on their mind. So to also know that it affects your children as well. It's not something that's
Yes.
just affecting you, but it affects the entirety of the family because that was their brother, that was their sister, and they know that, and they have to process that too. But when my son said that to me, it was like it took me back a little bit, but that's okay because they're thinking of it as well.
Right. Yes, it's important to know that they understand.
They
Crystalina,
do.
Crystalina, can you explain what the church teaches about the souls of those children who we lose when they are still so young? You've spoken to this a bit, that they are, in heaven. But what does the church say about this?
I'm not a theologian, but from what I've read and studied on my own from going through this, is that they become little saints and they become in the communion of saints. And that I understand we don't fully understand or comprehend or know what happens after because they are not baptized, but God gives that life. God created that life. God takes that life, and that life is close to God because it came from him. And that really gave me a lot of consolation when I think of my little baby that I wasn't able to hold or have. And one of the children that we lost, I was much further along, and this is when we lived in San Diego. We even had a burial service and a full-blown funeral.
Wow.
And they do this sometimes in different parishes where they will have masses and they will have prayer services like once a month or maybe every 6 months to remember that child and to offer up a mass for your family, for your grieving, and other women that have suffered loss.
Well, Crystalina, thank you so much for sharing all of your insights and for your vulnerability with this conversation. So grateful to have you on, as always. Crystalina Evert, God bless you.
Thank you for having me.